So, let me ask you something. What if the next big global conflict wasn't random, not an accident at all? What if it was actually the final act of a script written 150 years ago? It's a pretty wild idea, right? But that's what we're going to dig into today. This unsettling thought that maybe, just maybe, the wars of tomorrow were planned yesterday. Okay, so I want you to picture this. The year is 2026. It's April. In the Persian Gulf, everything's at a boiling point. Oil tankers are scrambling to reroute. Military forces are on hair-trigger alert. You can almost feel the tension in the air. Global trade is grinding to a halt. It all feels so sudden, so chaotic, and terrifyingly real.
And this is where we get to the heart of it. Are we just watching another regional flare-up? The kind of tragic but, let's be honest, familiar story we see on the news? Or is it something else? Something meticulously planned, following a blueprint that's been sitting around since the 1800s?
So the whole thing centers on the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, this is the most critical choke point for oil on the entire planet. And in this 2026 scenario, Washington sets a deadline. And from Tehran, just silence. The stakes? Well, they couldn't be higher, not just for the region, but for the entire global economy.
Okay, to really get why this idea is so provocative, we've got to jump in a time machine. We need to go way back. Because the source of this whole unsettling question, it's a controversial, maybe even legendary letter that was supposedly written all the way back in 1871. And here it is, the Pike Mazzini letter. So the story goes that this was a letter between two really influential guys back in the 19th century. And what were they supposedly writing about? Oh, just a casual plan to kick off 3 world wars. Yeah, 3 of them. Each one designed to tear down the old world order and build a new one from the ashes. A single global order. Okay, look at the sheer audacity of this plan. It's laid out in 3 steps. World War I, that was supposedly to get rid of the czars in Russia and set up communism as this big new boogeyman. World War II, that was about pitting fascism against Zionism with the end goal of creating the State of Israel. And then the grand finale, World War III, a massive, devastating clash between the Islamic world and Zionism.
Right, so the million-dollar question, is any of this actually real? And this is where it gets murky. The people who believe in this letter swear it was on display at the British Museum for years. But if you ask the British Library today, they'll tell you flat out, nope, never had it. So what are we left with? We're kind of stuck in the middle, between a massive conspiracy theory and a legend that just won't die.
But here's the thing. Whether the letter is real or not almost doesn't matter. The theory gets its real power from how, disturbingly, history seems to follow the script. So let's take a look. Let's see how past events and what's happening today seem to rhyme with this old blueprint.
So according to the theory's believers, the first 2 acts went off without a hitch. World War I? Check. It brought down a bunch of old empires. The Russian, the Ottoman, you name it, and gave rise to communism. World War II? Check. It destroyed fascism and created the perfect conditions for establishing Israel, right in the middle of the Middle East. Exactly as planned, they'd say.
And this is where you can see these spooky parallels to today. The so-called prophecy talks about a war between Islam and Zionism. Well, look at the 2026 crisis scenario. Intense tension between Iran and its neighbors. The script says the goal is to exhaust both sides. And what do we see in modern warfare? Asymmetric tactics designed to do exactly that. Bleed an enemy dry. And the ultimate goal? Global chaos. I mean, what's more chaotic than threatening the world's oil supply? And it gets even deeper. The source material points out that this whole idea of a big, engineered final conflict isn't just in this one letter. It actually echoes end times prophecies in a bunch of major religions. We're talking Islamic traditions, Hindu lore, Christian texts. They all seem to point to some kind of final massive upheaval, a great deception before a new era begins. It's a strangely common theme. Okay, so let's shift gears for a second, because from a practical, real-world perspective, the big question isn't really, is the letter real? The more important question is, so what happens when people act like it's real? How does a story like this, true or not, become a self-fulfilling prophecy? That's the real danger here. Because let's be clear, if a plan like this did exist, it was never really about religion. That's just the justification, the tool to get people fired up. The real prize? It's always the same thing, control. control of resources like oil, control of the story people believe, and ultimately control over what the world looks like after all the dust settles. And how do you get that control today? The playbook is called hybrid warfare. We're not just talking about tanks and jets anymore. No, no. Now the weapons are things like sanctions that can cripple an entire economy, the battlegrounds or the financial markets. And the amplifiers? Social media, used to spread fear and division and turn people against their own neighbors. And don't think for a second this is just abstract. The impact is devastatingly real. Think about this. One single spark in the Strait of Hormuz, just one, could cause oil prices to crash by 17% overnight. That sends shockwaves through literally everything all over the world. That's the kind of power you have when you can create a crisis in a world as connected as ours. And for the countries right there in the middle of it all, the stakes are, well, they're existential. Just look at a country like Pakistan. You've got a nuclear power sitting right in a super strategic spot. For them, a conflict in the Gulf isn't just something they see on the news. It's a direct threat to their fuel imports, to the money their people abroad send home. It's a threat to their very survival. So all of this, it brings us to the real bottom line. This isn't just about digging up some old history or exploring a wild conspiracy theory. This is about right now. It's about asking who actually holds the pen, who has the power to write our future. I think the biggest takeaway here is this. In the 21st century, power isn't just about who has the most aircraft carriers. It's about who controls the story. It's about who sets the deadlines, who writes the script for a crisis, and who gets to define what the conflict is even about. Those are the real tools of power today. And that's really what it all boils down to, right? The source material says it perfectly. The real contest is over who writes the next chapter, who gets to decide what happens, and, just as important, who benefits when all the dust settles. So let's end on this thought. Maybe it doesn't even matter anymore if that letter from 1871 is real, because the shadow it casts, that's definitely real. The idea of a script, whether it was written then or it's being written right now, is incredibly powerful. So the final question really is for you, for all of us. Do we even realize we're on a stage? And are we just going to be actors in someone else's play? Or are we finally going to start writing our own script?